shared during the meeting. If there are no questions, I'm going to call this meeting to order by taking attendance by roll call to ensure we have a quorum for this meeting. Michelle, will you call the roll?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Musse.
Here.
Vento.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion carries. The motion, we have a quorum. There was no motion. So this meeting is called to order, and the first item is approval of our agenda. You can see the posted agenda. If there are no objections or changes, then we can move on to our business. Are there any objections or changes? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the second item, approval of minutes. The minutes of our November 16th meeting were sent out. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, Johnson moves.
Second,
Johnson,
Lindstrom.
Lindstrom seconds. Any discussions, corrections, changes? I don't see any hands, so I'm assuming there aren't. Michelle, if you'll call the roll.
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is our first item under the business, 2020-326, accept the public comment report and adopt the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan Amendment. As you'll recall, Tracy Kenny and Emmett Mullen have talked with us quite a bit about the regional park system and ways we can enhance and further engage. And so tonight they're here with an update and an action item. So Tracy and Emmett, take it away.
Chair Vento, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. And
Thank
I can
you.
see you too.
2 for 2. That's
Yes.
good. Well, good afternoon, Chair and committee members, and thank you for having us today. This is a big deal. This is our recommendation to move the Regional Parks Policy Plan update amendment. So Tracy and I are here to adopt this 2040 Policy Plan amendment this afternoon. So that's what I should have said. Next slide, please. The purpose of today's discussion, we're going to share the proposed, I don't think this is the right, this is Jessica's presentation. Greg, could we get the Regional Parks Policy Plan? They all look the same. I'm sorry. I was sort of snookered in that first one, introductory slide.
Well, while we wait for that, I'll say something that I would have said toward the end of the discussion, Emmett, and that is that I want to thank you and Tracy, all of the staff involved in this, all of the regional parks and their staffs involved in this, and MPOSC, because I know that you all have done a lot of work throughout the year on a number of issues, and I just want to say thank you. So we'll start with a thank you, and we'll go on with your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Vento. We are at the right place now.
Yep.
If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. I knew I was missing something there. So here we are. Here's our agenda for today. We just have 3 short pieces to it. The first is we wanted to briefly review the lessons learned from this process because we think that they're important. Next, we'll provide a very high-level review of the actual recommendations, what's in the policy plan amendment. And then finally, we will request your recommendation to move this on to the full council for the full council's December 23rd meeting. Next slide, please. Here is our timeline, which you have, well, seen before. But our point here is that we have moved through the 4 stages of the public comment process, from inviting participation in this effort, from engaging stakeholders, from refining the plan, and here we are in December requesting approval. So, next slide, please. We met with you in mid-November, as you'll remember, and this is a slide from that presentation, but we thought it worthwhile to recognize that we did get good advice from you, which was to go beyond the sort of traditional outreach that we do with these policy plan updates and really try to pilot some new ideas. And that was something that we heard from you, the Community Development Committee, from our council liaison, council member Atlas Ingebretson, and our Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission. As I stated last time, our 3 big learnings are that, traditional engagement approaches reach our dominant culture audiences really well. And that was true. We conducted an online survey where we had tremendous support and response. But it was 97% of people from the dominant culture, white, Anglo-Saxon. It was predominantly women too, as an aside. Reaching new audiences takes time. That was our next learning, especially working with historically underserved audiences. And then finally, if a relationship with an audience is cultivated only when we need something, it doesn't work very well. This is a photo from our parks ambassadors, Amanda Lovely and Ellie Hohulin, and they met with this group from North Minneapolis called the Cycle Sisters. And they had this amazing outreach kind of outdoor celebration plan that we had to put the kibosh on because of COVID and just being very safe. And so in 2 days' time, Amanda rejiggered it, and they held a Zumba class online with the Cycle Sisters. And I think they had a great time, and they hosted a really good kind of discussion about the regional park system. And so that was just an audience of both, or an example of both adaptation and a good effort. Next slide, please. Thanks, Greg. So the public comment summary, here's what we heard. As you learned from us during our joint MPOSC meeting in mid-December, we received overwhelming support for the 26 system additions. Those are those regional parks, 1 regional park reserve, 17 regional trail search corridors, but just a lot of excitement about that. There were some concerns around our ability to pay for it, as well as maintain our existing system, but support. We also heard about the importance of natural resource conservation as part of our mission with the regional park system. There was significant interest voiced in our regional trails. This is predominantly that idea of an interconnected, seamless network of trails, perhaps connecting all the regional park units. And then we also, as part of the system additions process, there are 2 water trails recommended, and there were a number of folks that expressed support for them. Next slide, please. At this point, Tracy and I will get into the actual high-level significant changes in the policy plan, and I'm going to cover the 26 system additions. So there were 26 system additions or expansions. There were 4 boundary adjustments, so that was boundary expansions. There's one, there were 5 search areas, so new parks and trails, or Anoka County is proposing 2 regional parks become, excuse me, 2 county parks become regional parks. And Three Rivers is proposing the first ever bridging facility. So really exciting in that first and second tier suburbs. And then there are 17 regional trail search corridors. Some like the Metro Greenway already exist. This would just bring that amazing trail into our regional park system, and some are brand new ideas. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy to complete this presentation, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions or respond to any comments. Thank you. Next slide, please, Greg.
Thanks, Emmett. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Tracy. Thank you.
Chair Bento, council members, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Kinney. I'm a senior planner in regional parks, and I'll be handling the policy refinements. As part of the systems addition process and public comment period, there were a number of policy refinements. During the next few slides, I will provide a high-level overview of the changes in the policy plan. Attachment 1 in your business item includes a full list of changes by each chapter of the policy plan. Attachment 2 is a strike-through version of the draft amendment. And attachment 3 is a clean copy of the policy plan. And now let's focus on the policy refinements, including the boundary adjustments and bridging facilities. New policy was added that describes minor boundary adjustment criteria and processes for their requests. On occasion, parcels become available within park and trail master plans. Minor boundary adjustments may be considered with a concurrent master plan or acquisition master plan amendment. Significant boundary adjustments will still be considered through the systems additions process. Bridging facilities. Staff worked with the agencies on adding more description and criteria for bridging facilities. Bridging facilities are a type of special recreation feature that are intended to attract and introduce new outdoor recreation users to the regional park system. They are designed to prototype new ideas that advance equitable usage, focusing on underserved populations in the regional park system. Council staff agrees with MPOSC members from their last meeting that bridging facilities should be a progressive nature-based experience that intentionally transitions new visitors to regional parks and trails. We are excited to see this approach used in the development of master plans for new bridging facility search areas, and very excited to have one as part of this systems additions process. Next slide, please. Now on to park and trail master plan requirements and the equity analysis requirements. Policy refinements for the park and trail master plan requirements clarified master plan boundary criteria. Master plan boundaries for regional park and trails must include both an administrative boundary and a management boundary for known potential inholdings. Including both boundaries is important to accurately understand the size of any regional park or trail and the overall park system in general, as well as calculating funding and protecting the land through the comprehensive plan process. Next, the equity analysis requirement. The equity analysis requirement for master plans was approved by the council in February 2020. Thank you so much for your consideration on this. This requirement is designed to ensure that questions of who benefits and who is affected by the development of a regional recreational resource like a park or a trail will be addressed in the master plan. This requirement centers equity in the master planning process. Next slide, please. And now on to the cost to complete the system and the Chapter 9 plan items. For the estimated cost to complete the system, state law requires that the policy plan to estimate the cost of both the acquisitions and development of the park system. This estimate was comprehensively updated through the 2018 update of the policy plan. The 2020 amendment includes both the proposed regional trails, regional parks and trails through that regional through the systems additions process, and other park and trail updates. The estimated build out of the entire system is roughly $2.1 billion, which is the same amount as it was in 2018. This updated estimate reflects a new study for land values that affected acquisition land values. So the costs zeroed out essentially, and we have the same value, $2.1 billion to complete the system. And finally, onto the work plan for the Regional Parks Policy Plan. The work plan was updated with new studies, which will continue to evolve over the next 4 years, leading up to the 2024-2050 systems update. A few highlights include the Cultural Historical Study and Water Trail Study. The Cultural Historical Study will seek to describe historical inequities in the regional park system that result in barriers to use. This also includes the Land Acknowledgement Study to recognize the Native American community's role in the history and the region today, and the Water Trail Studies. This study will explore a subclassification or a new classification to provide paddling opportunities, camping, and more. And this was spurred on behalf of those new parks and trails that came through the system additions process that Emmett alluded to. So this wraps up the major policy refinements in the amendments. Next slide, please. So with the presentation and staff report in mind, the recommended actions before you is that the Metropolitan Council accept the public comment summary report on the draft amendment to the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, and to adopt the revised final of the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan amendment. And I should note that the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Committee engaged in a robust conversation at their December 3rd meeting that resulted in a unanimous approval for the recommended actions. Next slide, please. And with that, we'll stand for any questions, and we look forward to any of your comments or thoughts. Thank you.
Questions or comments from any of the council committee members? I don't see any hands. Is there a motion to approve? This will be recommended.
This is Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson, and I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Cummings seconds.
Cummings seconds. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Michelle, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Thank you. And again, thanks to the staff, to MPOSC. Kudos. This was a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of great work. So the next item on the agenda is item number 2, 2020-327, Pine Point Regional Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund Program. This presentation is by Jessica Lee. Jessica.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. This is Jessica Lee, Parks Planner, presenting business item 2020-327, Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund for Pine Point Regional Park, the Branson property in Washington County. Next slide, please. Pine Point Regional Park is located in the northern central portion of Washington County, just north of Stillwater, and a few miles southwest of Square Lake Special Recreation Feature. Next slide, please. Pine Point became a regional park in 2005. The 287-acre park has a variety of natural features, including pine forest, deciduous forest, mesic prairie, oak savanna, marshes, and lakes. In addition to 5 miles of multi-use trails within the park, Pine Point also serves as a major trailhead for the Gateway State Trail, an 18-mile trail that begins in St. Paul. Next slide, please. Here's a map of Pine Point with the 48-acre Branson property circled in blue on the east side of the park boundary. The Branson property was being used primarily for agriculture, has no structures, and contains over 14 acres of undeveloped open meadow and oak savanna. The park's policy plan amendment includes a boundary adjustment requested by Washington County. The current park boundary is shown here in red. When approved, the amendment will expand the boundary of Pine Point to include the shaded areas outside of the red border, including the Branson parcel. Next slide, please. The Branson property was appraised at $776,000, and the seller has agreed to that amount. The total cost, including stewardship and legal fees, is $787,000, and the grant amount is $590,000. Washington County will provide the required 25% local match. Next slide, please. Our rationale for recommendation is that this acquisition is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, state fiscal years 2021 Parks and Trails Legacy Fund appropriation requirements, the Pine Point Regional Park Master Plan, and Washington County is within its $1.7 million per fiscal year limit for Parks and Trails Legacy Fund park acquisition funding. Next slide, please. Our recommended action is that the Metropolitan Council approves a grant of up to $590,805 to Washington County for the 48.52-acre Branson property located at 120th Street North in Stillwater Township for Pine Point Regional Park, contingent on council approval of the amendment to the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, business item 2020-326, accept the public comment report and adopt the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan amendment, and authorizes the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council. Thank you, and with that, I would take any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing no hands, and holler if you have a question and I'm not seeing you. Seeing no hands, is there a motion to recommend to the full council the recommended actions presented by Ms. Lee?
Chair, this is Councilmember Atlas Ingerbretson, and I move to forward or approve those actions outlined by Ms. Lee.
Great. And a second, please. We're not going to let this die for the lack of a second here, folks. Come on.
Wolf seconds.
Wolf seconds. Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Michelle, will you take the roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson, Lee,
Aye for Johnson, sorry.
Lee,
Aye for Lee.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Jessica, I want to do a shout out to you and the Washington County staff and commissioners for the work on this. I'm sure I've bored everybody with this repeatedly, but I love this spot. And my husband and I used to bike from Lake Phelan out to Pine Point, and it was just a great urban suburban far out experience. And it was about 30 miles total, and it always just felt so good to get home, but it was always so good to get to Pine Point. It's a beautiful spot, and because of this work, it's going to be even more spectacular. So thank you. Our next item on the agenda is, let me get my notes in front of me here. Item 2020-319. It's a joint same week item. The City of Hastings 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. presented by Patrick Boylan. Mr. Boylan.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Again, I'm Patrick Boylan. I work in local planning assistance and community development. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the 2040 comprehensive plan for the city of Hastings. I sent links to this WebEx to City Director John Hinsman and the city planner for the city of Hastings, Justin Fortney, and I assume they're on attendance in today's WebEx meeting, but I did not hear a confirmation. Next slide, please. This map reflects Figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of regional system components within the city of Hastings. Trail search corridors include the Vermilion River Greenway and Mississippi River Regional Trail corridors with sort of the spray can kind of broad symbols you see on the map. U.S. Highway 61 is the main north-south transmission corridor and crosses the Mississippi River on a new bridge completed 2 years ago. Minnesota Highway 55 connects the city of Minneapolis and the city of Hastings off to the west, and also Minnesota Highway 316 also serves the city. Next slide, please. Figure 2 from the staff report identifies the city as an emerging suburban edge community designated consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. Hastings is located in eastern Dakota County with a very small portion of the city located in southern Washington County. Basically, it's the footings for the northern section of the bridge. Next slide, please. Table 1 is also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council revised forecasts in bold underlined here indicate the city will grow by 5,500 people, representing 2,800 households. There will be an increase of 1,500 jobs in the city in the same time frame. This is a slight reduction in what the system statement had issued. Next slide, please. Table 2 from the staff report illustrates the planned residential density in the emerging suburban edges of the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected between 7.3 and 19.1 units per acre. Communities with an emerging suburban edge designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall average minimum densities of 3 to 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. The Hastings plan is consistent with this policy. Next slide, please. The existing land use map refers to Figure 3 in the staff report, which shows the city's primarily residential land uses and development along transportation corridors. Next slide, please. The city's future land use map refers to Figure 4 of the staff report. The plan identifies areas with higher intensity of use around major transportation corridors of 55 and Highway 61, and the city's planned land uses accommodate forecasted growth within the current corporate boundaries of this plan and is consistent with land use policies in Thrive. Next, please. The city's development staging plan map here shows growth opportunities and constraints that are in the areas that are outside the existing corporate limits of the city. The city does not, that's mostly the hatched area off to the west and a little bit to the south. The city does not have an orderly annexation agreement with any of the surrounding townships. Over the past 20 years, landowners adjacent to the city have approached the city about annexing into the city of Hastings, which is mostly visible by the urbanized land uses along Minnesota Highway 55 into Nininger Township. The city has concept plans for land along Minnesota Highway 316 to the south and east and southward along Highway 61, in addition to adjacent Nininger Township and also to the west as mentioned earlier. The city has no planning authority and will need to apply to amend their plan when such annexation occurs. Next slide, please. The proposed findings in front of you are that the plan conforms to the Metropolitan System plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local government units in affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. The Environment Committee will consider this plan tomorrow on December 8th, and the full council will have its final review on Wednesday, December 9th. Next slide, please. The proposed action in front of you is to authorize the City of Hastings to place its 2040 conference plan into effect and advise the city that the council has reviewed the remainder of the plan and has found no regional system conformance or policy inconsistency issues at this time. Because the city does not have legal authority to plan and zone for areas within Nininger, Marchand, or Ravenna townships in the absence of an OAA, the city may not put those portions of the plan into effect at this time. At such time as the city of Hastings acquires jurisdiction in the lands planned for future urbanization in the surrounding townships, either through an orderly annexation agreement or annexation by ordinance, the city will need to submit appropriate plan amendments to the council for review and action. Next slide, please. To be continued, the revise to the city's forecast downward shown in table 1 of the attached review record, to revise the affordable housing need allocation to 360 units, and advise the city to provide the council when the date it adopted the final local water management plan, adopt the MERCA plan within 60 days after receiving final DNR approval, and submit a copy of the final adopted plan, evidence of adoption to the DNR, the council, the National Park Service within 10 days of adoption, and implement the advisory comms review section review record for forecasts. Just a reminder, I believe Mr. Hinsman, Mr. Fortney are on this call, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Questions from the committee members? Any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Wolf moves approval.
Wolf moves approval, and is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Second by Chambliss. Any further discussion? Michelle, will you take the roll?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Chambliss.
Aye.
There she
Did
is.
you get that? Sorry.
Yes. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
I want to thank, I apologize. I don't have the names. Mr. Hinsman, I can see your name, and I don't have the name of the other gentleman from the city who is here from Hastings with us, but I want to thank you on behalf of the council for your work. We know that this is particularly challenging as it relates to the growth in Hastings and the work that you're trying to do with your neighboring townships. So best wishes, and thank you for your approval of this.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. That motion carried, and we'll move on to the next item. Get my agenda in front of me again. I lost it. We have the 2040 comprehensive plan for, I believe it's Mounds View.
Yes, excuse me, Chair Vento. Yes, the item is 2020-320. It's a joint item for the city of Mounds View.
Yes, and Eric Wycheck is going to do that presentation for us. Eric, go for it.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. My name is Eric Wycheck. I'm a sector representative for Districts 2, 9, and 10 in local planning assistance within the Community Development Division. And I will be presenting the 2040 City of Mounds View Comprehensive Plan to you this evening. I'd like to let the committee know that John Sevald, the City of Mounds View's Community Development Director, is on the call and in the audience today. And I just wanted to extend a personal thank you to him for the hard work that he and his staff have put into this plan. And also I wanted to thank Beth Elliott, the consultant planner with Stantec, who also helped quite a bit on this plan. Next slide, please. This map reflects figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of regional system components within the city of Mounds View. Next slide, please. Figure 2 from the staff report identifies the city as suburban, and that is consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. Mounds View is located in the northwestern corner of Ramsey County. It is surrounded by the communities of Blaine, Shoreview, Arden Hills, New Brighton, Fridley, and Spring Lake Park. Next slide, please. Council staff find that recent residential growth in Mounds View has outpaced expectations and already surpassed the system statement 2040 forecast. In consultation with the city, The council staff therefore recommended a forecast revision, which you see here, and also is in Table 1 of your staff report. It shows that between 2020 and 2040, the city proposed forecasts that the city will grow by 200 people, representing 220 households, and there will be an increase of 400 jobs in the city in that same time frame. Next slide, please. Table 2 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density in the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 7.5 and 16.6 units per acre. Communities with a suburban designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall average minimum densities of 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. Mountains View's plan is consistent with this policy. Next slide, please. The city's existing land use map refers to Figure 3 in your staff report. The existing land uses in Mountains View reflect a fully developed community and are predominantly residential. The majority of the commercial, industrial, and institutional uses are located along Mountains View Boulevard or County High Road 10, which bisects the community. Next slide, please. The city's future land use map refers to Figure 4 in the staff report. The 2030 and 2040 plans are similar in terms of land use categories. The city plans to study the feasibility and alternatives for redeveloping land to function as a town center in Mountains View, using the mixed-use land use category to facilitate much of this redevelopment. Next slide, please. Council staff recommend the following findings: that the plan conforms to metropolitan system plans, is consistent with council policies with the proposed forecast revision, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. This plan will appear before the Environment Committee tomorrow, and it will appear before the Metropolitan Council on December 23rd. Next slide, please. Council staff propose the following actions: to authorize the City of Mountains View to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, to revise the city's forecast for households and population upward as shown in Table 1 of the attached review record, to revise the affordable housing need allocation for the city to 59 units, and advise the city to include the final local water management plan in the final plan that the city adopts, as well as submit the dates that the watershed approved the local water management plan and the date the city adopted the same plan. Also, the final proposed action is to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecasts and water supply. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Mr. Lindstrom.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Lindstrom moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second by Lee.
Second by Councilman Lee. Any discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, would you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Thank you, Michelle. And John, kudos to you and the city of Mounds View. And special thanks for sitting through all those other agenda items. You've been right up there front and center on my screen. So you've been a very patient listener, and we appreciate all the work that you and your colleagues went through to get this all put together. So kudos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next item is item 2020-321, City of Minnetonka 2040 Comprehensive Plan Review and Comprehensive Sewer Plan, presented by Jerome Benner. Jerome,
Thank you, Chair.
all yours.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Wonderful. So Hello, council members. Good evening. My name is Jerome Banner II, Senior Planner in the Local Planning Assistance Group in the Community Development Division. I'd like to let the committee know that Lauren Gordon, the City of Minnetonka's City Planner, is in the audience today. And I'd like to personally thank Lauren for his work and coordination efforts to get this plan complete. So, council members, before you today is the review of the City of Minnetonka's 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Next slide, please. Council members, this map reflects figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of the regional system component within the City of Minnetonka. Of note are I-494 and the I-394 interchange, US 169 and Trunk Highway 7, Lake Minnetonka LRT and Minnesota LRT regional trails, and several other trails that connect throughout the city. Next slide, please. Figure 2 from the staff report identifies the city as suburban community designation, which is the community designation that is consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. Thrive describes suburban communities as those that saw their primary era of development during the 1980s and early 1990s as baby boomers formed families and entered their prime earning years. Minnetonka is located in central Hennepin County. Next slide, please. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that the city will grow by 8,300 people, representing 4,100 households. There will also be an increase of 8,800 jobs in the city in the same time frame. Next slide, please. Table 2 from your staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density in the suburban areas of the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 10.1 and 75.3 units per acre. Communities with the suburban designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall average minimum densities of 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. Minnetonka's plan is consistent with this policy. Next slide, please. The city's existing land use map refers to figure 3 in the staff report. The city is fully developed with primarily residential uses. Several areas of employment concentration are within the city, including Ridgedale Center, Opus Business Park, and the I-394 and Crosstown regional business corridors. Next slide, please. This map here, council members, is the city's future land use map, which is referred to figure 4 in the staff report. The plan identifies development and redevelopment areas at densities that exceed the suburban residential density policy minimum and identifies regional areas where most of its growth will occur as high density mixes of housing, and jobs. Next slide, please. Council members, staff propose the following findings, that the plan conforms to the metropolitan systems, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local government units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. The upcoming meetings for the next couple of meetings will be the Environmental Committee tomorrow, Tuesday, December 8th, and the full Metropolitan Council on Wednesday, December 23rd. And the proposed actions before you today, council members, is to authorize the city of Minnetonka to place its 2040 plan into effect and advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecast and water supply. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Committee members, are there any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the proposed action?
Johnson moves approval. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Cummings. I'll take a sec. We both, you tell we sit right alongside that City of Minnetonka. I'll take the second on that.
Cummings will move, Johnson will second. Any further discussion? Seeing
Madam
none.
Chair, I just do, it's not my district, but I it sits just south of my district, and I've had a great working relationship for many years, as all of us do, with the City of Minnetonka. So just a shout out to them, just like all of our cities, but they do such a good job at, they're fully developed, working to redevelop and still focusing on those priorities of the things the Met Council cares about. So just a shout out to the city just south of my district.
Okay, Michelle, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musse,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. To Lauren Gordon and you and your colleagues in Minnetonka, I want to echo what Councilmember Johnson said. Great work. Thank you so very much. Like I've said to the previous folks with the comp plans, we know that this is a heavy lift and we appreciate your extraordinary effort to get the job done. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're going on to agenda item number 6, City of 2020-322, City of Pine Springs 2040 Comprehensive Plan. This will be presented by Jerome Benner again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, can you still hear me? Still hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. As the chair mentioned, my name is Jerome Benner, Senior Planner in the Local Planning Assistance Group and the Community Development Division. I'd like to firstly, I'm not quite sure if the folks from Pine Springs were able to make it, but I still would like to acknowledge them for all their work and commitment in getting this plan complete. It's very, very much appreciated. Council members, before you today is the review of the City of Pine Springs 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Next slide, please. This map reflects Figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of regional system components within the City of Pine Springs. Of note is the Trunk Highway 36 and the I-694 interchange. Next slide, please. Figure 2 from your staff report identifies the city as rural residential community designation, which is consistent with Thrive 2040, Thrive MSP 2040. Pine Springs is located in west central Washington County and is surrounded by the communities of Mahtomedi, Grant, Lake Elmo, and Oakdale. Next slide, please. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts the city's population will be declined by 30 people. There will be no change in households or jobs in the city in the same time frame. Next slide, please. The city's existing land use map refers to Figure 3 in the staff report. The existing land uses in the city are predominantly residential, followed by right-of-way, resulting from the I-694 and Highway 36 interchange that is located in the southwest portion of the city. Next slide, please. The city's future land use map refers to Figure 4 in the staff report. The city has identified a few areas of residential growth. There are 3 locations identified as vacant on Figure 3, which the plan identifies as potentially being developed as single-family residential uses. There's a small area that is currently guided residential immediately south of the interchange that is being planned for mixed use industrial uses. Next slide, please. Council members, the proposed findings today are that the plan conforms to the metropolitan system plans, it's consistent with council policies, and compatible with the plans of adjacent local government units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. The next meeting for this plan will be the full Metropolitan Council group on Wednesday, December 23rd. Next slide, please. And the proposed actions in front of you today, council members, authorize the City of Pine Springs to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, and also advise the city to provide the date that the watershed district approves the local water management plan once it's formally approved. Prior to submission of its final plan to the council, the city needs to include language in its plan that allows for the protection of historic sites, and also implement the advisory comments in the review record for forecasts and water supply. And with that, council members, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Cummings.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. We don't very often see a decrease in population. I'm just curious about that. Do you know what the cause of that is?
Mr. Benner, do you know? I think you're on mute, maybe. Jerome?
Madam Chair, council members, Councilmember Cummings, I apologize, but the reception cut out pretty drastically, so I couldn't hear the bulk of your question. Could you repeat, please?
Sure. The question is from Councilmember Cummings, and it's she noted the uniqueness of having a population drop between now and 2040. Is there any explanation for that the city has shared with you?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for repeating Councilmember Cummings' question. And to answer your question, Councilmember Cummings, the city did not share with me why they felt that, or why the population was projected to drop by 30 people, or 30 people. It's a fairly new kind of thing to me, for a question to me. So perhaps Director Barajas can enlighten us on that.
Director Barajas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. Jerome, happy to fill in there. In a community like Pine Springs, which is relatively small in size, the community is primarily made up of single family homes, and in that part of the region often is older households. So fewer children in households as they're growing up, moving out, and unfortunately going through the cycle of losing spouses is part of that as well. So just a natural cycle of household growth and change over time in a relatively small community too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Oh,
Excuse me. I believe Councilmember Chambliss had a question.
oh, sure. Councilmember Chambliss, I'm sorry.
I did. It was the same question that Molly had. So
okay.
Good. Thanks, Ms. Michelle.
Anyone else? Okay, Michelle, will you take the roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Lindstrom. Sorry about that.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Molly, I want to double check. I apologize here. I thought I was going to get through this whole meeting without messing up, but did we have a motion and a second?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, we didn't. Shoot. Okay. Sorry about
All
that.
right. So yeah, we're going to redo this. I apologize. Do we have a motion to approve?
Cummings moves.
And is there a second?
Atlas
Please.
Ingebrigtsen seconds.
Okay.
Thank you both. Now we can call the roll. Michelle.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Sorry about that. Okay. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion carried. And Jerome, thank you. If you'd extend to the folks in the city of Pine Springs our gratitude for their work on this. Great work. So thank you.
Will do, Chair. Thank you.
And we're going to move on to 2020-329 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Pre-Development Funding Recommendations. Hannah Gary, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So, hi, I'm Hannah Gary. I'm a senior planner with the Livable Communities Act, and I'm here to present the 2020 Livable Communities Act Demonstration Account Pre-Development Grant Funding Recommendations. Next slide, please. The recommendation before you today is to award 2 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Pre-Development Grants for $1,907,500 and to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Next slide, please. Previous slide, please, sorry. So the Livable Communities Demonstration Account funds projects that link housing, jobs, services, and transit. Next slide, please. I apologize. I'm having some technical issues with my computer. So the fund distribution plan, which was adopted in February of 2020, allocated $500,000 to the LCDA pre-development program. $250,000 is available to distribute in each of the 2 rounds. Next slide, please. 2 pre-development applications came in for the fall funding round. The applications were reviewed by a team of council staff scoring on LCA goals, which included land use, jobs, housing, connections, and environmental design, as well as readiness, catalytic value, demonstration value, and partnerships in process. Applications must score a minimum of 30 points to be eligible for funding. Next slide, please. So this is a breakdown of the funding recommendation. Both of the projects scored above the minimum required score, and both are being recommended for full funding. The total requests are for $197,500, leaving $52,500 in the account. Additional funds can be allocated to future programming. Next slide, please. Or next slide. And I'm seeing that this is not the correct presentation. If we could do the LCDA development presentation rather than the TOD presentation.
Yeah, I should have noticed that before. I apologize.
I apologize. I'm going off of notes in my presentation as well here. And as we get the next presentation up, much of the information that we have gone through already is actually the same for TOD and LCDA. So the funding recommendation amounts are the same in both LCDA and TOD, and the review process is the same. The scoring weighting is a bit different, but the process that the applications go through is the same for TOD and LCDA. So as we're going in, I guess, Greg, if we could start on slide 7, we can go into the projects that are being recommended for funding. And then if there are any additional questions on more of the specifics of funding availability or how those applications are scored, I'm more than happy to go through that.
Hey, Michelle, I have one that's 330, but I don't have a 329. Do you have that?
I just sent it to you via email.
I want you all to know that this has nothing to do with Hannah, Greg, or Michelle. This is the result of a technological pandemic known as ventoitis.
No, please, Sue, do not blame yourself whatsoever.
No, I just want you to know what it is. It's named after me because of the last meeting I chaired, so. Creates a little suspense for us all.
Greg, the one that you showed, that's going to be for Stephen. And I did not get that PowerPoint. So you have that one. And then you just received Hannah's too.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I mean, just for public purposes too, the correct one is in the agenda that it is
Right.
posted online. So if anybody was following along outside of this little moment in time, they've got the right one. And any of us can access that too, just via the link.
Yep, that's right, Councilmember Johnson.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you clarifying that.
Pardon?
I appreciate Councilmember Johnson clarifying that the link is available on the agenda.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Oh. There.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. If we could start with slide 7, and then we can avoid duplicating some of that same information. So now I'll be giving a brief overview of the 2 applications that came in through the LCDA pre-development program. This is one from the City of Minneapolis. So the City of Minneapolis is partnering with the owners of 2 properties at the corner of Lake Street and 27th Avenue that were damaged during the protests after George Floyd's murder. They're working with Seward Redesign and a variety of community stakeholders to explore a stormwater management system, adding affordable housing to the intersection, improving bike and pedestrian connections, and adding a public plaza to the area. The vision statement for the project is healthy and sustaining neighborhoods function like ecosystems, like organisms. We envision a community where the structure, food, energy, housing, and culture co-create an equitable, purposeful future for all. We envision many such urban organisms working together to become an urban ecosystem. Bottom line, we are here to collaborate with others in creating healthy, fully fed, self-determining communities, a model for the new reality of the 21st century. The project team is requesting funding for a market study, developing a site plan, building feasibility and wealth building models, building sustainability consulting, a stormwater management plan, and community engagement. The funding recommendation is to award the full request amount of $97,500. Next slide, please. So this project is coming from the City of St. Paul. The proposed project will bring 54 units of housing affordable at 60% of area median income to the project area. The development will include a tot lot, bicycle parking, and electric vehicle charging stations. The project is located near the Sweet Hollow Park and has access to the Bruce Bento Regional Trail. The project team is seeking funding for financial analysis, a market study, site design, and a travel demand management plan. The recommended award is for the full request amount of $100,000. And again, the funding recommendation before you today is to award 2 Livable Communities Demonstration Account pre-development grants for $197,500 and to authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there questions? Yes, Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not so much a question as a comment. I think both of these look really important. I'm glad that we can help them along. I'm especially happy about the Downtown Longfellow effort to rebuild and to get community input and work on bringing together some collaboration with the stakeholders to get a project going post civil unrest. There's so many limits to what the Met Council can do. And I think this just is really part of our vision. And I'm really happy that it's something that we can participate in. So thank you for the city for applying and for the staff for reviewing this in a positive fashion. I'm glad to see that.
Great. Other questions? Seeing no other hands, is there a motion to approve?
Moved by Lee.
Lee moves. Is there a second?
Second by Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
There's a second by Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, can you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chair Veto. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
I see him saying aye, but he's muted. Yeah.
Gotcha. Muse? Muse?
Aye. Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Hannah, you handled that beautifully. A lot of grace there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item, number 8, is 2020-330, Livable Communities Development Account, Transit-Oriented Development Funding Recommendations, pre-development funding recommendations. And our presenter is Stephen Klemick. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you again, Chair Vento. Council members, my name is Stephen Klimek. I'm a senior planner with Livable Communities Act, here to present the Fall 2020 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development, or LCDA TOD Pre-Development Grant Funding Recommendations. Next slide, please, Greg. The Council's Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development grants promote moderate to high-density development projects located within walking distance of a major transit stop, and then typically include a mix of uses such as housing, jobs, restaurants, shops, and entertainment. Next slide. The fund distribution plan adopted in March 2020 allocated $500,000 to the LCDA TOD pre-development program. $250,000 was available to award in the spring, and $250,000 is now available for the fall funding opportunity. Next slide, please. 2 LCDA pre-development applications were received on November 2nd for the fall funding round. Applications were reviewed by a team of Council LCA staff, and applications were scored on TOD design and demonstration, transit accessibility, walkability, and ridership, housing, jobs, catalyst, and process and partnerships. Applications must score a minimum of 39 points to be eligible for the LCD TOD pre-development funding. Next slide. The scoring process has yielded a staff recommendation that the Metropolitan Council award 2 Livable Communities Demonstration Account Transit-Oriented Development pre-development grants for $200,000 and authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Next slide. Given that recommendation, this is the table. This table is a summary of the recommended projects, table 2 in the staff report. The total request this fall, again, is $200,000 between 2 projects, with $250,000 available to award in this round. 1 project was submitted by the City of Minneapolis, and 1 project was submitted by the City of St. Paul. I want to give a brief overview of both of those. Next slide, please. The City of Minneapolis application is for the Nick at Lake project. The requested and recommended award is $100,000. The Nicollet Lake project seeks to transform the former Kmart site on Lake Street and Nicollet Avenue into a high-density mixed-use redevelopment near the Orange Line BRT. The future redevelopment intends to include higher-density, affordable, and mixed-income housing units, retail, and office space. The project will also focus on creating an enhanced public realm framework plan to encourage walkability, street life, and transit use, while also developing strategies to prevent displacement, retain existing affordable housing and employment opportunities in the area, and support new means of BIPOC wealth creation through the development process. This project would serve as a model for how the city can develop future mixed-use projects. The grant uses would include site plan development of a public space network, community engagement, an impact analysis for a displacement risk assessment and mitigation plan, and a wealth creation study for BIPOC participation in the project. Again, the funding recommendation is to award the full request amount of $100,000. Next slide, please. The City of St. Paul application is for the 678 North Snelling Avenue project. The requested and recommended award is $100,000. 678 North Snelling Avenue seeks to rehabilitate a vacant building for African Economic Development Solutions along the A-Line BRT. The project would serve as a community facility with a small business incubator, office space, commercial kitchen, and public realm enhancements, along with a future phase cooperative grocery. African Economic Development Solutions identified the need for this project from a lack of currently available amenities to low-income minority community social entrepreneurs who are unable to find spaces to prepare food, conduct day-to-day administrative business, and work with other members in their community to build organic community assets. Grant uses would include design workshops, financial analysis, market study, impact assessment and community engagement, geotechnical analysis, and site plan development. Again, the funding recommendation is to award the full requested amount of $100,000. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, staff's fall 2020 funding recommendation is that the Metropolitan Council award 2 livable communities demonstration account, transit-oriented development, pre-development grants for $200,000 and authorize its Community Development Division Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there questions? Yes, Councilmember Chambliss.
Hi, this is not necessarily a question, but more so a comment. Both of these projects are near and dear to my heart. The old Kmart site is the site where I grew up around. I rode my bike around those neighborhoods. And when they blocked off the street, that had a huge impact to that neighborhood. And I'm glad that that area is going to be opened up and redeveloped. The St. Paul project with the business incubator and commercial kitchen is a great example of innovation and a way to support businesses that is economically efficient. Many people who are immigrants do a lot of cooking and have been, kind of cooking out of their home to make it cheaper, and it's not always the best or the most legal option. These commercial kitchens will bring people out of their homes cooking into a business environment where it's economically feasible for them to make money in our American system, which can be so expensive. So I really support both of these projects. And if I might, and there is a motion, I'd like to be the first one to make that motion and get it going.
Okay, so we have a motion. We still have time for question and answer. We have a motion from Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second by Lee.
Second by Lee. Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? So we have a motion and a second to recommend these 2020 fall funding grants. No other discussion. Michelle, can you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chair Bento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse.
Aye.
Bento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Stephen, congratulations and thank you to you and that staff team who helped you with this recommendation. We appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Bento.
Yes. And our last business item, we have more after the business, so don't go away. But our last business item is number 9, 2020-331, the Edina Affordable Housing Partnership approval. Terry Smith is back with us, and this is a project that Ms. Smith talked to us about previously, and we were all pretty excited about it. So, Terry, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bento and council members. My name is Terry Smith, and I'm the director of the council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority, here to present for a second time on something that I think is pretty cool, but it's an Edina Affordable Housing Partnership. I presented an information item back in September. You all expressed great support for this, so now today I'm back for action with just 3 short slides. Next slide, please, Greg. So this partnership concept is with the City of Edina, who reached out to council staff. They had some funds available to provide additional housing opportunities for low-income persons in the city. They have about $2 million, and they were looking for partnership with somebody that had infrastructure in place to help get low-income families into affordable homes in Edina. So the idea is that the city would purchase single-family homes with these funds with the intent to rent them to low-income families, but the city does not have the infrastructure in place to operate the housing units, which is why they reached out to the council. As you know, the council owns and operates 8 family affordable housing program units within the City of Edina. We've owned those units since 2004. And the city would like to link into sort of our system for operating these units. So the idea is they would purchase the units and then we would utilize the current property management contract for day-to-day management and services for those units. Next slide, please. This slide shows what the roles and responsibilities would be for both the Metro HRA or the council and then the city of Edina. But the council's HRA, we would work with the city on developing unit purchase criteria. So figuring out which unit sizes and types work well. Within the city, we'd be looking at things like proximity to transit, proximity to services and groceries and things like that as we develop the common criteria. We would work with the city and the current management company to rehabilitate houses to bring them up to code. We would attach project-based voucher rent assistance to the units, and the Metro HRA would lease them to low-income families on the Metro HRA waiting list. And then we would provide ongoing maintenance and management through the current property management contract. And those services would be paid for through rental income generated from the homes. The city of Edina would, of course, pay to acquire the homes in cooperation with Metro HRA inspection and management team. They would pay for the home renovations on a pre-approved rehab budget. They would lease houses to the Metro HRA for $1 each year. And then they would provide funding for ongoing management and maintenance through the rental income. I should also mention that I've worked closely with the Office of General Counsel to develop this partnership. Next slide, please. So rationale and next steps. If you approve this item tonight, it will go next to the full council. And it's important to note that the council will not need to contribute any funds with the exception of minimal staff time to this partnership. So we would bring the units online and we would set up the operations with the management company. The city of Edina formally approved the partnership on November 12th, 2020. They're pretty excited about this as well. And then next we'd have to negotiate agreements with the city. So we currently have a cooperation agreement for the existing FOP units, Family Affordable Housing Program units that are located in the city. So we would either amend the existing agreement or create a new one for this purpose, likely amending the current agreement. And then we would work with the city to identify units to purchase. So we would look for units that are on the open housing market. And, you know, that will likely occur in the first quarter of 2021. And that's what I have for you, Madam Chair, this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I didn't even read the action. I should probably read the proposed action. That the Metropolitan Council approve the Edina Affordable Housing Partnership as described in the business item and authorize the Community Development Director to negotiate and execute agreements with the City of Edina or the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority necessary to implement this affordable housing partnership.
Great.
With that,
Thank you.
I can answer questions.
Now, do we have questions or comments?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Terry. This is, again, great work. I really appreciate the City of Edina, you know, leaning into this. So just a couple of questions, and I'm sure they're all covered under General Counsel and the ultimate agreement. But does the city, having been a city person for lots of years, when we, you know, acquired property, or I'm not sure if we ever needed to condemn property, but, you know, the city governments have a higher standard when making purchases. They're not just an individual. And I'm just wondering, is there anything that, you know, causes, if it's on the open market, does that relieve the burden of having to get, what am I trying to say? Valuations, not assessments.
Appraisals.
Thank you. Appraisals on the property. I'm just curious about that, if because the city is the buyer, if there's any extra steps on an open market. And then in the agreement, is there a time period or a date certain on the agreement where then it can be renegotiated or revisited to ensure things are working the way they need to be working as far as the relationship? And my last question is, and maybe this was covered before, does the city intend to bring more money forward, $2 million in this program. Is this potentially something that's ongoing that could be expanded, or is this kind of a set in stone what they want to do with this $2 million in particular? And then also, I'm sure, and it was covered, I think, any ongoing maintenance down the road. I mean, they're all brought up to speed now, but just ensuring that, of course, the city would very much care about, the condition of the homes and things like that. But just those things, I'm kind of curious about with the city in partnership on that.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Johnson, the details of this partnership will be outlined in the agreement. I can speak back to when the council purchased the Family Affordable Housing Program units. We purchased them like a traditionally on the open housing market. So we had appraisals, we had valuation, we had a formal inspection to make sure the units were in good repair, and I would anticipate the same would occur here. In terms of the partnership opportunities, there is no expiration date in our current cooperation agreement, but there are clauses in there for terminating the cooperation agreement if something's not going well on either party's end. So I would anticipate we would, continue to have those clauses in there, and maybe even additional clauses, because we won't own the units. We will just sort of own and operate the units. And then trying to think of your third question was.
I actually think you covered it.
Okay.
In that last answer. And again, I think it's a great program, but I'm always, the details, and I know you guys have it covered, but it's innovative. It's a great partnership, and yet you always have to manage to, the unknowns to the best of your ability. So again, thanks to you and your team, Terry, for leaning in the city of Edina as well.
Councilmember Cummings and then Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a great example of our partnership that advances our mission and adds housing, and especially in a community where housing is a little bit more expensive than we're generally accustomed to dealing with. So I think it's just great. Terry, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Edina has an opt-in for developers. So if they can include a certain amount of affordable housing in a new housing project, or they can pay in lieu, and I think that's what's funding this. And if that's the case, and there's lots of development going on in Edina, I suspect that there may definitely be future opportunities from that pool that we may be able to partner on. But this is just really an exciting development, and it's so enthusiastically received, certainly by the council when Terry presented in September, and by the city of Edina. And hopefully it will be an example for other communities as to creative and innovative ways that we can work together to advance the goal that we all have, which is adding to our housing stock. So thanks for all your work on this, Terry. This is really exciting.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cummings, that's accurate. The funds for this came from that pool of money. So that's what they have now. I mean, it could grow in the future. I also think this could be a partnership example that could be utilized by other cities if it works well. And, right now we're not charging a fee for our services just because I think it's very minimal staff time, but there may become a time when, if this grows too much, we're not going to be able to handle the capacity, without additional staffing resources. So that may change down the line, but I think it could be used as an example elsewhere.
Great. Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that was actually my question about you having this as a model, because it does seem like a great partnership in that they have the money and we have the infrastructure to carry it out. Are you aware, Terry, are there other cities that have a similar payment in lieu structure that might be interested in this?
Councilmember Lindstrom, and Madam Chair, there are cities that have this type of policy in place. I don't know if Tara's online or Lisa, they probably know exactly which cities, but we have not approached any cities. I thought maybe once we get this up and going and we can see how it works, then it might be an appropriate time to reach out to some other cities that have these policies in place.
Great. Any other questions or comment? Councilmember Johnson.
Sorry, and I hope this is okay, Madam Chair. In my day job, working with Prosperity's Front Door, we're creating the scorecard that tracks progress against the Governor's Housing Task Force, the goals that were released in 2018. And we have a section of stories of impact that we're trying to gather because we want to demonstrate to other entities, partnerships, local governments, private, public sector, housing partners, good work, and so that it can scale and others can try to replicate it. So, Terry, offline separately, maybe I'll just send you a link. It's a super easy form to fill out, but I'd be happy in my day job, assuming all of this moves forward, to at least capture the essence of it and then share it more broadly so people can across the state see how this came to be and maybe take a look at it for themselves. And within those stories, we always have the contact information as well. So,
Madam Chair, happy to do so. And Councilmember Johnson, I know that our housing policy team tracks which cities have which inclusionary housing policies adopted, and so they can be a tremendous tool in this too and resource. So,
good. So, do we have a motion to approve 2020-331?
Cummings moves approval.
Cummings moves. Is there a second?
Johnson will second.
Johnson seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, can you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chair Vento. Atlas Ingebrigtsen,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Musset,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, motion carries. Next, agenda item number 5, an informational presentation, the 2021 Competitive Equity Grant Program Priorities, presented by Amanda Lovely and Jessica Lee. Amanda and Jessica.
Thank you. Again, this is Jessica Lee, Parks Planner, presenting the program priorities for the 2021 Regional Park System Competitive Equity Grant Program. Amanda Lovely is also here and will join us for the discussion at the end. Next slide, please. The purpose of today's discussion is to share this year's Equity Grant Program priorities based on what we learned from the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, the Community Development Committee, and from several meetings with the park agency's directors, planners, and outreach staff. We also want to provide a final opportunity for input on the development of the 2021 Notice of Funding Availability, which we hope to bring to you for approval in January. Next slide, please. Equity grant program proposals must clearly articulate how the project will advance equitable use of the regional park system by addressing one or more of the following equity focus areas: race, ethnicity, income, ability, age, or national origin. Next slide, please. This year, we have just over $2 million available for the equity grant program. $664,000 is available for capital projects, and $1.4 million is available for parks interest earnings, which the council has prioritized using for non-capital programming projects. Next slide, please. Capital projects may range from $20,000 to $200,000. Agencies may submit multiple grant applications for capital projects, but may not receive more than $200,000 in capital funds. Examples of capital projects include park and trail signage, mobile classrooms, accessible facilities, and public art. Capital projects may include engagement and outreach if they directly inform the project being proposed. Next slide, please. Non-capital projects may also range from $20,000 to $200,000. Agencies may submit multiple non-capital grant applications, but may not receive more than $200,000 in non-capital funds. Examples of programming projects include outdoor education and skill building, events, outreach, partnership building, marketing, communications, training, translation and interpretation services, developing an ADA transition plan, and new programming staff. Non-capital projects may include budgeting for equipment valued at less than $5,000, such as basic essential outdoor equipment. Next slide, please. Again, this year, there will be a review team to score the proposals and make recommendations. The team will be comprised of up to 4 Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission members, up to 3 Community Development Committee members, up to 2 Equity Advisory Committee members, and up to 3 implementing agency representatives. Next slide, please. The evaluation and scoring criteria will be similar to last year, but condensed for a much simpler review process. It will also prioritize programming, partnership building, and internal collaboration with outreach staff. The 5 review categories are impact of equitable use, community partnerships, community engagement, capacity building, and programming initiatives. Next slide, please. Projects will have a 3-year grant term with a 1-year extension possible. Agencies will be required to submit semi-annual reports so that we can track the ongoing progress of the project. And a final outcomes report will be required before their final reimbursement. Next slide, please. After we receive input from you tonight, we will finalize the 2021 Notice of Funding Availability and bring it through the Council in January. Once that is approved, we will open the application system and accept proposals for approximately 6 weeks. After that, the staff will take a few weeks to review applications for eligibility and completeness, and then the review committee will meet to provide funding recommendations. We're hoping to bring those recommendations to the Council for approval by June. Next slide, please. So that brings us to the discussion portion of the presentation. Do these priorities reflect your priorities? Are there any areas that are unclear? And are you comfortable moving forward with the next steps? Amanda and I are happy to take questions, and we also want to thank you for all your previous input to help us get to this point. Thank you.
So, committee members, there are 3 good questions there for us to ponder and to help give Jessica and Amanda and their colleagues some direction. Who wants to weigh in? Wendy, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I expressed earlier concerns after the last round of grants that we sort of undervalued the accessibility portion of equity for people with disabilities. I've heard over and over, well, all projects include accessibility because they have to have ramps and the bathrooms have to be accessible and such. But we've so far been taking a different attitude towards accessibility than we have towards racial equity. With racial equity, people have long been physically able to go to the park, they just didn't have anything they wanted to do there. I think we need to take the same attitude towards ability. It's not just that you can get a ramp or you can get up, get into the bathroom. There has to be something meaningful for you to do while we're there. And I want to, if we're going to use the same priorities that we used in the last round, basically, I want to understand how are we going to get away from this attitude that as long as there's a ramp and a bathroom door that's big enough to get your wheelchair through, that disabled people then are considered taken care of in terms of equity. I don't want to get another round of recommendations for grants that include public art, but 0 for accessibility projects. So maybe somebody could comment on that.
Jessica or Amanda, do you want to respond at all?
Okay. Oh. This is Councilmember
Yes.
Breton, and I'd like to respond as part of my role as the lead between the council and MPOSC. So I just want to share that I don't think that that's an accurate characterization of our conversation at MPOSC, and I think staff could probably confirm that, nor was it an accurate characterization of our rating conversations. We actually, and I encourage anyone who cares about this topic to listen to the recording of the last MPOSC meeting where we talked about this explicitly. During the rating last time, we were really concerned, and it wasn't as a function of the rating, it was actually a function of the concerns that people with disabilities weren't in many of the some of the projects brought in with fidelity and engagement. And so we have a member of MPOSC who is a member of the community, has a disability, and we spoke at length about this and what we could do to ensure we had better fidelity with our implementing agencies. So it wasn't just kind of a sticker project. A lot of what we were seeing were things like a accessible ramp and other types of things. And we wanted to see something that was done really in partnership with the community, so it was really meaningful, just like what Councilmember Wolf is describing. So so I just want to encourage people concerned about this topic, listen to our last conversation at MPOSC, provide some feedback to the team. And we talked to the staff about what we could do to be proactive about helping the implementing agencies explicitly around this topic. It's Tom Kierner, our commissioner on NPOSC, who was really generous about offering his time and advising services, which he does over and over and over again, but also for us to challenge people who don't have physical disabilities or other disabilities to really do the work they need to do to be able to develop fantastic opportunities in the outdoors, so that we have projects come forward that are really done with great intent and beyond just meeting, that aren't about ADA compliance or things that should already be in place, but are true enhancements and enrichments and valuable opportunities. And I encourage staff, if I left something else or mischaracterized the conversation, please to chime in.
Other comments or questions? Emma put the questions in the chat function, but I'll repeat them. Do the priorities reflect CDC's thoughts and priorities? Are there areas that are unclear or that could use additional clarity or explanation? And are you comfortable moving forward with the next steps? Wendy and Linnea, or council members Wolf and Atlas Engelbretson, you both offered valuable points, and I really appreciate the conversation. And it would be good as this process goes on if there are ways to keep us apprised of these kinds of conversations. I think it's really important. I think often of people who may have vision or audio issues, and how can we enhance the experience for those folks as well as those with physical limitations. So other comments or questions from the committee? I can't see all of you, but if you've got one, just pipe up.
Chair, this is Councilmember Lee. Can I please say
Yes.
something? Thank
Yes,
you.
please.
I want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Wolf, for her comments. But I think that we don't have to, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game between when we solve for equity and where we kind of weigh disability over race. When we solve for one issue, many times we solve for a lot of issues. So, for example, I'm going to bore you all with my military nerd history stuff here, but the barrel writing system was invented so that artillery officers on the battlefield could communicate with each other at night without using flashlights and giving away their positions. And then it was adopted later for the blind. Sometimes, we solve for one thing, and it helps uplift something else. And so it doesn't have to be a zero-sum conversation. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Chambliss.
I want to thank everybody for weighing in on that. I think it's important to be intentional about how we enhance our plans, and be intentional about equity in terms of access and opportunity, including folks that are disabled. I know that, sometimes, we advance equity and that it opens up opportunities for women. It's in the past, it's opened up opportunities for the disabled. And that's good, but if we can be intentional, that's even better.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Atlas Engelbretson and then Councilmember Cummings.
I just want to also include, just so that for folks who aren't going to go back and listen to our conversation at MPOSC, we did also talk about cognitive difference as well. And that's another topic that comes up quite a bit. And what made me recall that was Councilmember Lee's comments. And a great example is what has happened at playgrounds to make them more accessible and better for people with autism, also make them a very interesting space everybody to visit and more accessible for maybe grandparents or with kids and all kinds of things like that. So that was another audience that we talked explicitly about. That's the kind of stuff that the commissioners really want to see, are things that really bring a richness to the experience. That's not just like Councilmember Wolf said, offering access to the bathroom or access to a trail or so that someone can and acknowledges the full diversity of what people experience when they have different types of limitations.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just am going back to the slide number 9. It says final outcomes report prior to final reimbursement. I just want to make sure that the committee and the full council gets to see, not necessarily before final reimbursement, that's not up to us, but would really like to see the results of the outcomes. So I hope that that will be shared with us. I think that's really important.
Good suggestion. Good suggestion. Anyone else? If I'm not seeing you pipe up, speak now or forever.
Madam Chair?
Yeah,
Councilmember Johnson. Thank you, Madam Chair. And just, first of all, thanks for all this good discussion. Thank you to Councilmember Wolf for being a voice and an advocate to ensure that the position that you make is very clear. And thank you to Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen for being a great liaison and lead from the council to MPOSC and the group. Will the application and will the information for this be explicit when it, so that people understand that there are different things in this, equity effort that we're trying to do, so it's clear that it can be, on differently abled aspects, but on race and income and all the things where we're trying to close and end gaps. Will that just be understood? And bonus points if you can do more than one thing with your program or your investments that you're trying to make. But I think it'd be great just so that everybody who's applying really understands that it can touch all those things, right? That's the intent.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to be clear in my remarks earlier. I was not trying to characterize any current discussions of MPOSC, and I appreciate if the conversations have gone broader than they were in the past. I was referring to the last round of grant applications, which I felt were disappointing, and I want to do better this time on serving everybody. We're seeing a lot of innovation at city parks in terms of, like, Chaska is doing a accessible golf course now. Lakeville did a accessible mini golf and playground and baseball field. The city parks are doing a lot of innovation. I want to see the same sorts of innovation coming in our regional parks so that people have meaningful experiences there. And I appreciate the clarification from Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen. Thanks.
And Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Just so I want to make sure that I'm clear and understanding. When you, Councilmember Wolf, when you're asking about your concern was about the quality of the proposals that came forward in the last round, not that the way that they were rated didn't allow proposals that address those concerns to come through.
Madam Chair, can I respond?
Yes, Councilmember Wolf.
Yes, I expect better programs, and I expect more intentional discussions with the operating agencies about how we can include meaningful participation, not just check the box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the checking the box part is important too, because if you can't go to the bathroom, it's hard to enjoy the park. But yeah. The meaningful experiences as well, because when we very early on when we discussed this, there was a lot of, capital doesn't really reflect equity, but if the facilities are nothing that you feel like you can do, it really does impact equity, and I don't want to lose that part of the conversation. Much of it's been directed around, well, it really needs to be programming, but there are certainly things that are capital that are important for people that currently don't feel welcome in the parks to be able to have a meaningful experience.
And Madam Chair, if I may just follow up on my question, I'm just trying to get at the making sure the information we put out, it's very clear that, in the event that whatever we can do to make it very clear that we're inviting all those types of applications to come in and encouraging, and I'm sure we are, but, if the last round didn't have a lot of what Councilmember Wolf is focusing on or paying attention to, just as a matter of point, if again, just in our outreach and in our work, just ensuring that the language and the message is there.
Okay. Other comments? Any other comments? Seeing none, Jessica and Amanda, thank you both very much. This is a huge amount of work, and I'm always impressed with the thoroughness, the total attention to detail and thoroughness that you folks go through in communicating with us and advancing this work and getting it through the year to the point you're awarding grants. So kudos and thank you. And with that, we've completed almost all of the agenda. We have one last item. Director Barajas has a brief report she'd like to share with us.
Good evening, council members. Lisa Barajas, Community Development Director. I just will keep it super brief. I just wanted to preview a conversation that we'll be having in the coming meetings about our work planning for 2021 and priorities for this committee, as well as advancing your strategic priorities that fall within the Community Development Division's work. And given the amount of work we have, we are going to be asking for your advice on how to prioritize that work in the coming year and what the big things are that you'd like us to accomplish. So though we'll be having that. And then I also wanted to just give a big shout out to Greg Ricci, who's just been phenomenal. As you might have seen in some reports, we did have an incident at our 390 Robert Street facility that kind of flooded our technology within the building the same day as our MPOSC meeting last Thursday. And Greg went out of his way to make sure that we could still hold that meeting, live stream it, and everyone could be on board and even work from a different location. So I can't thank him enough. And so because of that, we might have had a couple of hiccups today because he was working from multiple locations, but still on the ball, and so much appreciate all of his work and going out of his way to make sure that we can do our work as well.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody.
Kudos to all of the staff, Greg, Michelle, Lisa, all of you. Thank you very much. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Take good care.
Thank you guys.